Good morning, everyone. This is our final meeting. As you know, we have to get a report completed this month. And Emily has worked incredibly hard on a draft report. Thank you for all of your work, which we circulated this morning. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we thought we'd start with the feedback we got from the survey we sent out to prosecutors and defense lawyers. Barb and Judge Fuca. I'm surprised Takura's not here. He didn't say he wasn't coming, but do you all want to talk at all about the findings and what you learned from them?
Well, Judge Fuca, I don't know if you have anything. I mean, when I read through the findings, I don't even know what I felt. I mean, I was not surprised, but then sometimes I was surprised. I'm really glad that we did it because I do think that we gained a lot of knowledge from that if you read through the comments. And some things that I'm not sure that we can address even in this committee or in our report. But as I was reading through the comments, I did sort of get a vibe that there was several people who responded with things like, more people are getting out and committing crimes and record numbers of failed to appears. I mean, they're making statements that are not backed at all by the numbers of the research or anything that's going on right now. So, that's a little bit disturbing that people have these ideas in their heads and they're just making these sort of blanket statements with no factual basis. So that's kind of where I was. It's like, wow, we still have a lot of work to do. That even though, Chief Justice McCormick, in your travels when you went around and you did all of those, hours and hours of public testimony. But I think that we need to focus more in-house within our own system because there's still so many people that are practicing every day in the system that just really don't have the knowledge of what's really going on and what these, reforms were supposed to do and what impact they actually are having.
Yeah, the need for more training certainly came through, and also more, transparency with data. I don't know how to tell that story, but there's so much successful fear mongering around crime generally that it's figuring out how to interrupt it with data is kind of important. So. Other thoughts on the results that we saw? We included those comments just I think for the reason, Barb, your reaction is part of why we think including those comments matters. The comments tell a story that we should take note of. So. Any other thoughts or comments on the survey results?
I just want to concur with Barb. Well, it's funny because when I was reading the comments, I'm like, oh, that's coming from a prosecutor. Oh, that's coming from but I concur also that the education is still lacking, and it's, it did confirm my suspicions that a lot of the judges are just still doing whatever they want to and just crafting ways to get around it, which, I don't love, but I'm not surprised by that either.
All right. Well, I think it was still a great idea to do it because I think it really gave us important information that that informs how we think about what needs to happen going forward. The only other thing we wanted to talk about this morning is kind of the process for moving this report across the finish line. And you just got it in your inboxes. I don't expect you to have read it by right now. But if you have, or if you have any thoughts about what you want to make sure is in it, we can certainly have a conversation right now. So let me open it up for your questions or comments about our final report.
So of course I have some comments. First of all, Emily, it's fantastic the amount of work that you did during this whole process has really been amazing. And so thank you so much for all of that, and being able to pull all those comments together and put them into, commentary that really made a lot of sense, and that was very thoughtful. So thank you for that. But as I was just kind of quickly reading through it this morning, one of the things that struck me is, we have a lot of these comments that indicated judges either sometimes they're doing it or rarely or never, but whose responsibility is it to ensure that the judges are doing these things? Like, I know, it's like we always say, defense counsel, make sure they're making a record, make sure, but and so the responsibility falls, on them some, and I guess on the prosecutor as well. But we know that that's not always going to happen. So what is the larger role of SCAO or the regional administrators, or who's really supposed to ensure that these things are being done? And if they're not, how is that handled?
So I think the short answer, Barb, it's a great question, Barb. I think the short answer is there's not a single person or organization responsible, but the court, both through SCAO and through MJI, I think has an important role to play in training and providing information and support. The regional administrators are supposed to be, sort of in touch with what's happening in local courts and assisting judges in doing their jobs in the way the law requires. And MJI is obviously responsible for a lot of the training that's not yet mandatory, but soon will be mandatory for judges in Michigan. But in some ways, it's going to fall to the lawyers as well. And it's going to be, that if we don't see if nobody appeals decisions, then then there's going to be no appellate law created that is probably more than those other tools, the best tool. And so I don't know if I don't want to put any lawyers on the spot, but I don't know if you're seeing any effort to appeal rulings that should possibly be appealed. I know from where I sit, we're not seeing many of them, if any of them. So,
well, I think part of the problem is, and some of those comments did mimic the sentiment that by the time they go through the appellate process, it's too late. I think part of the answer to the problem is really making appeals accessible, quick and accessible, like within 48 hours, something very quick, so that that the attorneys are, motivated to do something, because I get why they're not appealing when by the time the case is heard, their client served their 30 days.
Yeah, I do think the court rules allow for a process for expedited appeals. I don't know how many lawyers, especially busy lawyers in trial courts, have the time and information about how to do that, how to file an expedited appeal, but the Court of Appeals will entertain them. It might be another area for training for lawyers, right? That an expedited appeal, it doesn't have to be that complicated. It can be done pretty quickly and easily.
It would be nice if we had like an appellate, like an MIDC for appellate, like an appellate MIDC, where so that's what these lawyers do. They get on it, and with the ease of handling these matters with Zoom now, they wouldn't even need to be like local attorneys. They would just be attorney. If I'm a defense attorney and I think that what the judge just ruled on should be appealed, I reach out to this group of lawyers and I say, this is an issue, I think it should be appealed. And then they, I don't know, I just think deferring to an expertise would just be even better. And then it would also take care of the concern that I had, which was attorneys appearing in front of judges all the time, not wanting to appeal those judges because for fear that that'll, have problems for them for future clients and in future court appearances. So, in my perfect world, we have a legal aid, a appellate legal aid
You know, we kind of have that in Sato. Sato is, you know, normally only does the cases they've been assigned to represent somebody in a direct appeal. But they have other, I mean, they could, it's a great idea, Judge, for all the reasons you said, but they could have a sort of bail appeal strike team, right? That basically they know how to file an expedited appeal. It's really no problem for them. It's basically forms that they do it all the time. So maybe we need maybe a recommendation should be, you know, that Sato should consider doing, you know, putting together a strike team, just like a couple of point people who it's really no work for them, gather the information and file a quick appeal. I know that when we went through the task force process, we assumed that there would be some of this like quick emergency appeals of judges' decisions, because that was going to be part of changing the culture. You know, sometimes you need an appellate court to say, stop doing that before the culture really changes. I like this idea. I like a bail strike team situated within Sato. I bet they'd be game. Yeah. Any other thoughts or reactions to the final report right now?
So Justice, I'm wondering if it would be helpful to go through the recommendations that are in the report.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And see if there's any additional recommendations that the group would like to make or questions around the ones that are already there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I've got the report up. Okay, so are you able to see?
Yep.
So recommendation 1 is around unified data in a unified case management system for the courts. And this stems from a lot of the conversation that this group has had around difficulties collecting data, identifying data sets, being able to act.
Emily, you're frozen for me. Is she frozen for everybody else? Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Data, which is part of the reason we are kind of relying on Dr. Kubiak. Am I still frozen?
No, well, you got unfrozen and did that thing where you talk really fast, but now I can. Yeah.
Okay, so that I don't know how far I got, but I was just discussing that this recommendation is around the issues that this group has discussed around not having access to data sets, not being able to collect large groups of data. The data that we were able to access was very limited, and this group having to rely on Dr. Kubiak and the Wayne State Center for Behavioral Health and Justice to recreate the original data pull that was done by the Pew Charitable Trust to really be able to get a good feel for the effectiveness of these reforms. So that's recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2 talks about the training issue that stemmed a lot from the survey results that we received, and being able to kind of push out additional training for not only attorneys who are interested, but also judges, law enforcement, all of the different stakeholder partners that might need a refresher on the reforms or might need some additional information to be able to effectively practice within these reforms. Recommendation number 3. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I just. Recommendation number 3 is additional and ongoing training. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. Recommendation number 2 is around additional stakeholder surveys for judges and law enforcement to gauge what the knowledge base is on the reforms. So similar to the surveys that were distributed to the attorneys, we would like to get some more information on what experiences are, not so that we don't just have quantitative data, but we're also taking into account how the reforms are affecting day-to-day processes, things like that, and what challenges law enforcement and courts are finding the reforms have been enacted. Recommendation number 3 is on the ongoing training issues and making sure that that information is out there and available, and that attorneys, judges, law enforcement, everyone is aware of the reforms and how it has changed their day-to-day process. And then recommendation number 4 is we're making the recommendation to establish an additional body, being that this council is about to wrap up its work. So once that data poll and the analysis has been done on the data from the Center for Behavioral Health and Justice, there will be an additional group to kind of look at that information and compare it to the original task force report, compare it to the work that this council has done, and possibly make some additional recommendations around a healthy set of data that is able to really give us a good idea on what the effects of the reforms were. Are there any questions around those recommendations or other recommendations that you would like to add into the report?
Thanks, Emily. How about this idea that we just came up with about and we don't have to call it a bail strike team. We can wordsmith it, but some appellate specialists who can turn their attention to this issue. Maybe that goes in the training. I don't know. Maybe it's a sub recommendation in training. I'm not sure. Barb, you unmuted. You might have something to say about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would like to see it as its own standalone recommendation, because I think it's that important that it merits that. And it can be, I love, of course, because I'm a pretrial person, but I love the bail strike team, but it really should be, appellate for any of the decisions, right? Not just the bail, but if a judge, imposes jail on something or that they're not supposed to. So just, an appellate strike team, an expedited expert appellate strike team.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, even judges imposing probation and for no reason. I mean, I would like to see those types of things appealed also. So I agree that as much as I love that the bail strike team, I really like that, but I agree. I think it needs to be even broader.
To that point, I want to add, and I don't know that I've ever expressed this before, and she just jogged my memory about having tethers for no reason. If they're not a flight risk, if they're, and just for full disclosure, my son was probably 17 with a paintball gun, thinking that, he wasn't even, it wasn't something that was malicious to him. They're playing around with a paintball gun. He gets caught with a paintball gun. And he was on tether. I never said anything because I didn't want them to think that I was trying to use my position to influence anything, right? But I felt that the judge knew darn well he wasn't a flight risk. He's my son. We live in Harper Woods. We were down the street from where it occurred. And he had these tethered bills that fortunately I could afford, but other people would not have been able to afford.
Mm-hmm.
That's another good reason. I agree that to make it a more general, like sort of an appellate team focusing on all of these issues. Thanks, Rep. Yancey. It's another part of it. Yeah.
Hey, Justice, is DJ. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I actually don't mind the idea of the appellate team, but isn't the whole idea of MIDC and the funding that they get to do things like that? So to have a separate entity when really PD's offices should have that money already available, because my concern is, and I can tell you some of the pushback you might get from us prosecutors is, we're already super underfunded, and then to have to go and obviously answer all these questions, and maybe we agree with the idea that the judge made the wrong decision, but we're going to be again in a position where we're going to be asked to do something without the necessary resources to do it. And we're already battling that a little bit with MIDC, and I'm just wondering if MIDC monies should be allocated for such a process as opposed to a whole separate division where, again, you're talking about the whole state, and we've already got regional or specific offices set up across the state.
Thanks, TJ. I didn't mean to be suggesting that we advocate for funding a new unit at all. I guess I was thinking more, it isn't clear to me that the MIDC lawyers are trained in any of the appellate processes. So maybe SATO could, you might be right that it makes more sense for SATO to work with each regional MIDC office to kind of provide them with the training and information and maybe backup and support that they would need to be able to do it. I guess I don't think I care who does it, and I don't think advocating for a new unit is something that would go very far. I meant to say use the resources that are already being funded to make sure that the law can be enforced. That's all. And I think the good news is if the prosecutor agrees that the judge made the wrong decision, they can just concede it, and then it's really easy on appeal. We love a concession.
So do we when we're right.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think this recommendation should be, and if anybody disagrees with me, please speak up, but I don't think advocating for funding a new unit is going to be a way to do this. I think it's, let's see how we can just bring the resources we already have in state to this issue. Any other thoughts or feedback on the recommendations we have so far?
Just to follow up, I think the data being number one is so critical.
Yeah.
And everything that I've been involved in, that always seems to be the central focus. And it's really hard to really get a grasp on whether something is good, bad, or indifferent without solid numbers behind it. And to my knowledge, we've never really had that. So making that a priority to me, I think is important.
I agree completely. And since we are now, and that recommendation is, consistent with recommendations that have come from basically any other task force that's worked in the criminal justice area. And since the legislature funded the building of a statewide case management system, it's nice to just keep echoing how important that is. So I completely agree. All right, so looking at the process that we've laid out, we're going to figure out how to add this additional focus, some appellate, attention on training, either training lawyers or MIDC regional offices, finding someone who can help quickly when quick help is what's needed. Other than that, which we will add, we are suggesting that if you have any other thoughts or edits, that you get them to us by Wednesday next week at 4, with the goal that we then circulate an updated or revised report by Friday. And then we would ask for everyone's final votes by Wednesday the 14th, which will give us time to get the report where it needs to go. Does that sound like a process that could work for everyone? Awesome. All right, any other final thoughts or things that you want to raise before we say goodbye to our Zoom meetings?
I'll just say that I just appreciate being a part of this group, and I've enjoyed the discussions, and I appreciate everybody keeping an open mind, including myself. So thanks for the opportunity. Justice, as always, it's a pleasure to work with you on these projects.
Thanks, DJ. It's been really great to have you. We really appreciate your input.
Ditto. I'll be brief. Ditto.
Thanks, Rep. Yancey.
And I just want to say I appreciate how DJ can make a bow tie look spiffy with a 3/4 zip. That's awesome.
That is a skill. Yeah.
I do my best.
All right, everyone. Well, look for information in your inboxes from us. And again, if there is any need to hop on a quick call, we can do that. But I'm hoping we can push this across the finish line through our email communications over the next week and a half. Thank you so much, all of you, for your work on this. We really appreciate you. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Yeah.